Tonight, a passenger jet rocked by turbulence. The plane diverted as millions travel for the Labor Day weekend. The United Express flight from Aspen to Houston flying into turbulence. Passengers tossed around the cabin. Oxygen masks dropping from overhead. The plane descending more than 4,000 feet in less than a minute. The pilot reporting injured passengers and requesting a stretcher. It comes at the height of what is expected to be record travel over the holiday weekend. Also tonight, tracking thunderstorms and rain from Texas to the Dakotas. Temperatures up to 15 degrees below average for much of the country. Lee Goldberg with the Labor Day forecast. New reporting on the deadly school shooting in Minneapolis as children scramble to safety. What the shooter's father allegedly told police about the suspect's most recent relationship. And why authorities say security procedures in place during Mass likely saved lives. Tonight, amid the turmoil at the CDC, major pharmacies limiting access to the COVID vaccine in some states as cases rise and millions look for guidance from the nation's top health officials. The news breaking just moments ago, an appeals court ruling on President Trump's sweeping tariffs, what the court decided and how it could affect economies around the world. Tonight, President Trump signaling he's expanding his immigration crackdown in Chicago. Law enforcement officials telling ABC News the administration is planning to surge immigration enforcement operations as early as next week. How city leaders are reacting tonight. With the college football season getting underway, a University of Miami football player now facing charges in the deaths of 3 people killed in a high-speed crash. The Powerball jackpot now worth $1 billion. The Labor Day weekend drawing now the largest jackpot of the year. And Robin Roberts returns to the Gulf Coast 20 years after Hurricane Katrina. The children of the storm surviving the devastation, the moment their childhoods changed forever, and how they're still learning to cope with Katrina's lasting emotional toll.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us on a busy Friday night. I'm Mary Bruce in for David, and we begin tonight with the chaos on board a regional passenger jet rocked by turbulence. Several people injured during what's expected to be the busiest Labor Day holiday for travel in 15 years. A United Express flight from Aspen to Houston diverted to Austin after the pilots declared an emergency, reporting several people needed medical care. Video showing oxygen masks dangling from the ceiling. The plane dropping more than 4,000 feet in less than a minute. The aisle littered with personal items and debris. A menu somehow stuck to the ceiling. Tonight, the airline says the plane landed safely and everyone is okay, but a difficult start to the holiday travel for those passengers and crew at one of the busiest times of this long weekend. ABC's Morgan Norwood leading us off.
Tonight, a mid-air scare aboard a regional jet at the height of the Labor Day weekend travel rush.
We will need a stretcher, and I know that there is bleeding as well.
A United Express flight rocked by turbulence on Thursday as it traveled from Aspen, Colorado to Houston, Texas. Flight Radar 24 data showing the turbulence that caused the aircraft to drop more than 4,000 feet in less than a minute. Passenger Gretchen Gilliam says the turbulence came out of nowhere.
The man in front of me flew up and hit the ceiling.
Multiple people injured.
There was people saying prayers very loudly. There was some people hollering out what's wrong, what is going on.
Images from inside the cabin showing oxygen masks deployed. A menu stuck to the ceiling. The floor littered with passengers' belongings. The aircraft, with 43 passengers and crew on board, forced to divert, making an emergency landing in Austin, Texas. 2 adult passengers later transported to the hospital, all injuries said to be non-life-threatening. It comes a day after air traffic control issues halted many incoming flights at Newark Liberty International Airport for nearly 2 hours. The FAA reducing arriving flights by nearly 20%. But tonight, operations returning to normal.
And Mary, SkyWest, which operated that turbulent flight, says that plane landed safely. Medical crews immediately rushing in on the ground there. They also say United, its partner, is working to assist customers. Mary?
A frightening start to the holiday for those travelers. Morgan, thank you. Now to the weather this holiday weekend. Pockets of heavy rain are set to cause some travel trouble. So let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg of our New York station WABC. And Lee, much of the country with cooler than normal temperatures.
Absolutely, Mary, but a couple of trouble spots to begin the holiday weekend. There's a severe thunderstorm watch over parts of Colorado, into the Texas and Oklahoma Panhandle, and New Mexico as well. Some of these storms have 60-mile-per-hour gusts and large hail. We had some gusty thunderstorms over eastern New England this afternoon. They continue into the early evening hours. It's a fall feel to start the weekend in the Northeast, and then a modest warm-up into the upper 70s by the end of the weekend. It's really rinse and repeat through the weekend. There's a stalled front over the Gulf Coast and the plains. That'll be the focus for some showers and a few thunderstorms while it's dry in the Northeast. The West starts warm and dry, then we get hot, a bout of extreme heat and fire danger into next week. Mary?
Lee Goldberg tracking it all. Lee, thank you. Now to the chilling new details from the deadly school shooting in Minneapolis. Police are now in contact with the suspect's parents. What the shooter's father allegedly told them about the suspect's recent relationship. Families mourning the loss of 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel and 10-year-old Harper Moisky. But the police chief says the church's security procedures during Mass likely saved others' lives. Here's ABC's Alex Perez in Minneapolis.
Tonight, a community trying to heal from overwhelming heartache after Wednesday's heartless attack that killed 10-year-old Harper Moisky and 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel and injured more than a dozen other children. At the hospital, officials say 5 pediatric patients remain hospitalized, 4 listed in satisfactory condition, 1 still in critical. One bright spot today, another patient was released. 13-year-old Andre Gunter still in the hospital. He was shot in the stomach. His aunt writing he has showed strength and faith beyond his years, and that before he was rushed into surgery, Andre looked at the surgeon and asked one simple, powerful request. Can you say a prayer with me? Outside the hospital overnight, supporters turning out, lighting candles. At one point, looking to the hospital's windows and offering a comforting wave to patients inside. And tonight, new details on how the chaos unfolded inside Annunciation Catholic School Church Wednesday. The first 911 call coming in at 8:27 a.m. Officers on scene by 8:31, just 4 minutes later. Police Chief Brian O'Hara telling me the church's policy of locking the doors before Mass saved lives.
Thankfully, to the processes that the church had in place, all of the things that those kids, that the school staff did, clearly this could have been so much worse.
A search warrant obtained by ABC News reveals the killer's father told police his child recently broke up with their significant other and was living with a friend at the time of the attack. And today, police confirmed they have been in contact with the killer's mother, but it's not clear if she's cooperating.
There has been conversation, and I am not at liberty to go any further than that.
And Mary, officials here at Annunciation say they will decide this weekend when classes will resume for students here, but public schools begin next week, and the governor says he will deploy law enforcement to schools and places of worship. Mary?
A horrific start to the school year. Alex Perez in Minneapolis again tonight. Alex, thank you. Next here tonight, growing confusion over the COVID vaccine. CVS, the nation's largest pharmacy chain, is now limiting access to the vaccine in some states, even as COVID cases rise. It comes amid the turmoil at the CDC and with millions looking for guidance from the nation's top health officials. Here's ABC's Selina Wang.
Tonight, with changes to vaccine policy fueling the turmoil at the CDC, confusion over how and where Americans will get the new COVID vaccine. Today, just as the new vaccines are rolling out to pharmacies across the country, CVS announcing it will limit access to the shot in 16 states, requiring prescriptions in 13 states, including New York, Florida, and Colorado, and simply not offering it in 3 others. It comes just days after the FDA approved the COVID vaccine for this fall, only for Americans over 65 and adults and children at high risk. But a critical CDC panel is not expected to give their recommendation for several more weeks.
Because of that uncertainty, it is putting a lot of hesitancy among the pharmacists and patients around what that coverage may actually look like at the end of the day.
The White House insists the vaccine will still be available for all Americans who want it, but pressed on whether insurance will continue to cover it, the White House sidestepping.
The FDA's decision does not affect the availability of COVID vaccines for Americans who want them. We believe in individual choice.
The White House also quick to note less than 25% of Americans get the booster each year. It comes as HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a longtime vaccine skeptic, has been overhauling the nation's vaccine policy, this week ousting the head of the CDC, Susan Monarez, when she refused to get on board with his changes. Her lawyer saying she refused to rubber stamp unscientific, reckless directives and fire dedicated health experts. Kennedy charging ahead, naming his deputy Jim O'Neill as the interim director of the CDC, who has said he supports vaccines but not vaccine mandates.
And Mary, with COVID cases already ticking up, some medical groups are warning against putting limits on who can get the shot. And tonight, Walgreens is telling us that they will give the vaccine shots in states where they're able to. Mary?
And Selina, there is breaking news just in. A federal appeals court ruling on the president's sweeping tariffs, calling them unlawful. So where does this go from here? And how is the president now responding?
Mary, that's right, but those tariffs do still remain in place for now. The court is giving the Trump administration time to appeal this case, now likely headed for the Supreme Court. And tonight, the president is weighing in. He is slamming the decision and calling on the Supreme Court to rule in his favor. Mary?
Selina, thank you. Now to President Trump revoking Secret Service protection for former Vice President Kamala Harris, just weeks before she begins a nationwide book tour. ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas joins us now. And Pierre, what are you learning about this sudden move?
Former Vice President Harris has 3 days to come up with a new security plan after President Trump revoked her Secret Service detail effective Monday. In doing so, the president strips away an extension from former President Biden that would have given Harris a full additional year of Secret Service protection on top of the 6 months offered under federal law. Tonight, it's unclear what prompted the abrupt change, but Mary, it's no secret there are not a lot of warm feelings involving the parties here.
And just before her book tour begins, Pierre, thank you. And tonight, Chicago is bracing for an immigration crackdown. The Trump administration signaling its campaign of mass deportations is heading to the Windy City as soon as next week. Here's ABC's Jay O'Brien with more.
Tonight, President Trump ramping up his immigration crackdown targeting Chicago. Law enforcement officials telling ABC News the administration plans to surge immigration enforcement operations in the city as early as next week. Adding DHS has asked about using a nearby naval station as a base of operations. It comes as the president looks to expand what he calls a nationwide crime crackdown. After taking over law enforcement in Washington, D.C., Trump has repeatedly said his focus could soon turn to Chicago. Telling me,
Chicago, everybody knows how bad it is. They should be saying, please come in.
But local officials today condemning any influx of federal agents.
These raids are not law enforcement, but instead they are fear enforcements.
Mass deportations, a key campaign promise of the president, who has flooded federal law enforcement supported by the National Guard to largely Democratic-run states and cities, some led by Trump's political rivals. Earlier this month, Homeland Security conducting what it called a routine operation outside a Los Angeles event for California Governor Gavin Newsom, making one arrest. Newsom calling it an act of intimidation.
And Mary, Chicago, just one part of the administration's wide-reaching immigration enforcement plans. ICE is now on track to have the largest budget of any federal law enforcement agency in the country. Mary.
Jay O'Brien, thank you. Overseas tonight, Israel is ramping up its military takeover of Gaza City, declaring it a dangerous combat zone. The city is home to hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. What happens to them now? Here's ABC's chief international correspondent, James Longman.
Israeli forces tonight launching their long-feared occupation of Gaza City, once a place of refuge for hundreds of thousands displaced by war. Now the IDF calls it a dangerous combat zone. Aerial bombardments have ramped up and Israeli troops are already demolishing homes on the city outskirts. Children and families forced to move again. Raeda Auda, already displaced twice, fighting back tears, saying her feelings are indescribable because of the sadness and pain she feels. Israel says the siege is necessary to root out Hamas and find the remaining hostages. But humanitarian groups and some European allies fear it's a plan to push Palestinians out for good. It comes as Israel says it's recovered the bodies of 2 hostages in Gaza, taken on October 7th. One of them, Ilan Weiss, was killed defending his kibbutz. Today, his wife and daughter, who were also taken captive but later released, can finally mourn his loss. Mary, there are still nearly 50 hostages in Gaza, some 20 of them believed to be still alive. And tonight their families are calling on the Netanyahu government to get back to the negotiating table and make sure every one of them can come home. Mary?
And the future of those talks unclear. James, thank you. And when we come back, a University of Miami football player now facing charges in the deaths of 3 people killed in a high-speed crash. And Robin Roberts returns to the Gulf and her hometown 20 years after Katrina. The damage and the heartbreak in the region, the children of the storm and their long road to recovery. Tonight, a University of Miami football star arrested and facing charges in a deadly high-speed crash, killing 3 people in Largo, Florida. Adarius Hayes, now accused of vehicular homicide. Authorities say he was going nearly 80 miles an hour in a 40-mile-per-hour zone when he crashed into a car, killing a woman and 2 children back in May. The school says he's been indefinitely suspended from all sports activities. And when we come back, the FDA expanding the recall for radioactive shrimp, and the Powerball jackpot hits $1 billion. To the index now, the FDA is expanding its recall of potentially radioactive shrimp. Walmart now pulling 26,000 packages of Aquastar cocktail shrimp. Kroger recalling 18,000 bags of Mercado cooked shrimp. Health officials concerned the shrimp is contaminated with radioactive material. No illnesses, thankfully, have been reported. And this weekend marks the end of a remarkable era in college football. Lee Corso, the beloved longtime host of ESPN's College Gameday, is retiring after nearly 40 years on the show. Now 90, he will make his final appearance at Ohio State before tomorrow's game against Texas. College Gameday airs tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern on ESPN. And we send our congratulations to Lee. And the Powerball jackpot now worth a staggering $1 billion. Tomorrow's drawing the largest prize of the year, the cash option worth $453 million. Best of luck. And when we come back, Robin Roberts returns to the Gulf 20 years after Katrina, the children of the storm and their long road to recovery. Finally tonight, 20 years after the storm, Robin Roberts back in the Gulf.
20 years since Hurricane Katrina devastated the Gulf Coast. The eye of the storm not far from my beloved hometown of Pass Christian, Mississippi, leaving a trail of pain and destruction.
It's so important for people to realize the long-term effect that a storm like Katrina can have, even if an area builds back. These were homes that their ancestors passed on to them. And so to lose their homes at a time that they could not afford to live and buy in that area now, a place where they used to live and live for generations.
The psychological effects of such a tragedy, one of the worst natural disasters in our nation's history, even more difficult for so-called Katrina babies to process.
Ever since I was a little girl, I just loved the city and loved everything about it and the people. Literally a week before Katrina was my birthday, so I turned 9. Everybody who was my age, all the Katrina babies, we had to do the same thing because it was just like this. In the twinkling of an eye, our lives changed. I didn't think we was gonna get rescued. We lost hope until the 3rd day where we saw a helicopter, was able to flag it down. I'm holding on to my mom and I'm like, man, I don't want the basket to fall. And I was just like, what's next? What's life after this?
Dealing with the storm, being a child, it kind of forced you to just grow up. There was maybe a year of time where I was away from home. Functioning, it was just surviving. Then you're also hit with the reality that home is no longer the same anymore the moment you arrive. It's hard to think about what your life is gonna look like. All it seems like is that you're having to rebuild an entirely new life.
Dealing with their trauma and rebuilding their lives, finding joy the New Orleans way.
Music had become my therapy. I just couldn't get enough.
We have trauma to heal from. We have wires to untangle mentally. So it's just a lot that you have to kind of unpack. So me at 31 years old, I'm still unpacking.
Our thanks to Robin for sharing their stories. Robin's special airs on ABC tonight at 8 Eastern, streaming tomorrow on Disney Plus and Hulu. Thanks for watching. I'm Mary Bruce. For David and all of us here, have a good night.
David Muir, the most watched newscast in America. And now, ABC's World News Tonight has won the Emmy for Best Live News Program for the third year in a row.